working with multiple containers. Yeah, in this particular session, I'm going to demonstrate how we can have one web application with MVC web page and the other would be a web API project. And I want web application to communicate with web API for some kind of functionality. And I want these two projects to be under common solution, and each project should be created as a separate container. I don't want both of them to be in a single container. I want them to be in different containers. So basically we want to demonstrate how we can have multiple containers instantiated with ease using Docker Compose. So let me follow these steps one by one. So I now create a new project, new folder. Let's say multi-container demo, cd multi-container demo, and in that I would like to have now two projects created. One is .NET new. I would like to have a web API project created. Let's say the name of the web API project is EMP web API. And I already have one project which I created in the previous session. Either I can use that or I would probably create it afresh in case you have not watched the previous session. I would like to have a new MVC project and I'll call that as a Hello Web App. I wanted Hello Web App, not API. So a new folder, Hello Web App. So two projects are created. I'll delete that Hello Web API which I created by mistake. Now both the projects I would like to be part of new solution. So just say .NET new solution. Its solution is created. You will see that we'll have one Hello Web App, EMP Web API and the solution. So these two folders now, basically respective projects, I would like to add to this particular solution. So .NET SLN Hello solution, multi-container solution, add Hello Web App / the project file csproj. So Hello Web App project file is added to the solution. Like that, I need to add the EMP tab / tab CS project. So basically I created now one solution and two projects. Yes, we can now go to code and do the rest from there. Visual Studio Code. The first thing, both the projects I would like to add a Docker file. So Hello Web API, this folder I don't need, I'll delete it. I want EMP Web API and Hello Web API. So in both I would like to add a Docker file. And here also I would like to add a Docker file. The basic skeleton I'm creating first. Now from the documentation, from the handout, let's say this is a simple Docker file for EMP Web API. I would just like to add one step here. Copy star.csproj to dot and then move this restore up so that every time it doesn't do rebuild. And rest is fine. We have working directory. In the working directory only we are generating the DLL file. So you just need to give this .NET space hello web app.dll. Perfect. Save this. I go back to my project. I create now the other Docker file. Same story here also. And we don't need this restore second time. So we have two One is EMP Web API.dll and the other is Hello Web App.dll. Now if I go ahead manually doing the building of containers and execution, I will have to execute two build commands. I will have to execute two run commands, and very importantly, both have to communicate with each other. Basically, my requirement is Hello Web App should be able to use EMP Web API. That is my requirement. So now how to do that? First, let us write the required code for the controller. So I have here simple class in my here I have controllers. I would just like to add employee.cs and a simple employee class. I am taking only two properties, good enough for demo purpose. And I would like to write code now in my existing controller. There is values controller. I would like to add a new controller, and that new controller I want is employees controller. So I'll take that code from here and I'll explain it to you. Something very simple. So right click, add a new file, employee controller.cs. Of course, we need the relevant namespaces on top. All fine. So what is there in this? It's an API controller. Employees controller is an API controller, and it's going to begin with API slash the controller name, in this particular case employee. And I'm putting here a static variable into which I'm putting all the employees data. I'm creating and adding employees to the employees object, which is a list of key value pair. Key is integer, which is employee ID, and value is the employee object itself. So rather than actually fetching from database, I have to keep it simple, hard coded all the data right now. Working with database containers, we will see separately later. But right now we have static, iDictionary, employees, the dictionary object, and blah 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 blah. And of course, I have also added two methods, get, in which I am going to return all the employees collection, and of course there is a get again, but this time we are going to get with parameter ID, and that is returning only an employee with that particular ID. Whatever is the ID mentioned here, that will be returned, either 1 or 2. So two methods only I have provided. My API is ready. Yeah, you may want to probably even test it locally. You may want to simply execute this using localhost and blah blah blah. I just want to skip all those steps. Now it's time to write the controller where I want to use this. So that is home controller in my Hello Web App has home controller, and here itself let us say we would like to use it, or let us put another method just to avoid. I'll add one more method, get employees, and I would like to call get employees here. So how to do that? We will need a HTTP client object for that. So I give you a HTTP client using net.http client. And using this HTTP client object, we have to call the get async method. And to get async method, we are supposed to provide the request URI. So what is the URL of the EMP Web API? See, right now I can simply put HTTP localhost and give the port number on which that EMP web API is going to execute. But what if once a container is created? The container IP is going to be different. So in such case, what should I give here? Now to know the value here, what I would suggest is we first go to the terminal, go to the folder EMP web API and run .NET run command and see at what port number it is going to execute. .NET run, it is executing at port number 5000. Control C, I go back here and I put here 5000 slash API slash my controller name, in my case it is employee, and I would like to get all the employees. So just give slash, that's it, no need to mention any ID. Or let's say we want to get only one employee. So in such case you can give ID, maybe in our case the ID is 1. I want to get an employee with ID 1, that's it, only one. So get async, return type var await, giving some error, only in async. Okay, so let's change this to async and task. So here what is this? Instead of var, let us be more specific. It is supposed to be HTTP response message. Now once we have the HTTP response message object, from the response we can get the content. So we know that in our case the content is the employee object. So is equal to await response. Okay, this is response, not request. Response dot content dot read as async. So all the content we are reading now. Now I will give generic type here employee. We know that we are going to get employee, but employee class is not there in this project. Type or namespace not found. So what I'll do is the copy of the employee what I have here, Control C, I'll just paste it in this project also. In both the projects I have employee now. So all fine, and this actually is nothing but the employee object. And that employee as a model I am passing it to the view. Now can I use this in my view which is home, and inside home I would like to add now a new view, get employees dot cshtml. Following are employee details, and there I can put ID @model.id, break, name @model.name, and those are nothing but two properties of the model object, in our case employee. ID, name. Ideally speaking, this is better. Model.id, model.name. Now let's run this. First we will try to run this locally. I have both the projects up and running. So I will first run the web API project, -d. sorry, minus D does not make sense for actually .NET. So I just open one more window and here go to Hello Web App, and in Hello Web App also I'll say .NET Run. Now port number 5000 is already taken by the EMP Web API. So obviously this is going to take a different port number. It has failed, pretty obvious. This project also is trying to run on port number 5000 only. So what to do in case we want this project to run on a different port number, because we cannot have two applications running on the same port number on localhost. So for this, go to under properties, you'll have launch settings. In launch settings, we will change here. Let's call it as 5002 and 5003. So if it is HTTPS, it is 5003, and if it is HTTP, it is 5002. So very important, if it is Docker file, if it is app launch settings of EMP Web API, I have not changed anything here. So by default, it is going to run on port number 5000. But Hello Web App is going to run on port number 5002. Save it. Now go back. Again execute the same command .NET Run. It should not have any problem now. Fantastic. I copy this, put that in the browser, and it works. And give here slash the controller name home slash get, what is the method name I have taken? Let's verify. In the home controller, the method name I have taken is get employees. So type that, get employees, enter, and we should get the output. The details of one employee we should get. Following are the details, employee ID 1 and 2. Of course, right now I have hard coded. The idea is simple. We want one web app to communicate with another web app. Right now, both are running on the same local host. But eventually, I would want to run them on maybe different container instances, though maybe right now on the same machine, on the same host, two different containers I would like to have. And what is very important is when they run as two different containers, the IPs are going to be different for both the containers. So in such case, putting here hard-coded value of localhost is not going to work. So if hard-coded localhost is not going to work, likewise maybe the port number also might be a concern. So I would like these two values to be variables, and I want them to come from my app settings. So I go to now application settings. For the Hello Web App, application settings, and here I would like to add a key value pair, service host. Default, let us give it as localhost only, and I would like to give service port, and yes, default is 5000. But this should be consumed and used in my Hello controller. So let me close this, and in home controller I should get the reference to iConfiguration so that configuration file can be read. So I will add here the home controller constructor, and I'll inject the iConfiguration object. And through configuration, I have already got two key value pairs, and I would like to use them. So yes, first I'll declare two string variables, service host, which is equal to, let's say, the default value localhost. In case it is not given anywhere in the configuration, this value should be used. Like that, string service port, I would like to have default value, let's say 5000. Now how do we get them? I'll write here string host is equal to configuration of service host. Likewise, string port is equal to configuration of service port. Now if host is not equal to null, can I assign that to service host? Likewise, if port is not equal to null, I would like to assign that to service port. Simple. So if these are not there in the configuration, localhost and 5000 will be used. But if they are there in the configuration, the values from the configuration file is going to be used. So right now they are there in the configuration. So the values will be used from the configuration file. So let us see now all this is still working or not locally first. So I'll stop the container which was earlier created. Here also I stop and just run once again. Don't forget to save all the files. Control K S is the shortcut. All the files should be saved. So .NET run. Here also .NET run. So web API I am executing. Web application also I am executing. Web API has been launched already, localhost 5000, and here 5002. Run this in the browser. 5003 of course. Just refresh it, Control F5. You see it is refreshing. We should get the same output. Good. Absolutely no problem. So both are still connecting and executing. But we are right now executing them locally, not even using containers. Next session, I will move this whole application into a container setup. So let's continue with this in the next session. But before that, let me quickly summarize what all I have done. I've actually created a new project, rather two projects under a single solution. So two projects under single solution. These are the steps you need to follow. Added to both the projects the respective Docker file, and in API project I added an employee class and a controller which is going to provide me details of the employees. Of course, right now for demo I'm using only one method, but you can use this method also. And then in the Hello Web application, I've added in app settings actually two, service host and service port. So I separated them. So this is by default 5000, whereas this is only localhost. And then in the controller, home controller, I got the reference through the configuration file, HTTP client object. Of course, right now it is hard coded, which is wrong. I'll make the changes to the handout before I give it to you. But yes, eventually we want to get the response and read the data here. Execute both of them locally first. See the output. Once everything is running fine, then we will move on to the next step where we want to integrate the application through containers. So see you in next session.